Soul Simmers, and welcome to episode 11 of the Builders Bootcamp. Today we're going to be diving into landscaping. This contains everything surrounding making nice looking like pathways, plants, stuff like that. It does not include the terrain tool because that is so big and so such a separate topic that I will be making a separate episode on the terrain tool coming out very soon as well. So today we're just going to focus on landscaping. Today's episode will be a little bit more tip focused rather than telling you how to do things, specifically because landscaping is also very dependent on your personal preference. Something that I might like, a bush, a plant, a certain item in the game that I think looks really good, you might think it looks really ugly. The most important tip I can give you with landscaping in The Sims is basically try to do it as often as possible and find your own style. You will probably find 4 or 5 items that work for you. The only thing I can do is give you like tips and tricks that I've been taught while building or by other simmers that have massively helped me in getting better at landscaping, making it way more fun. But I would highly suggest just start playing around with it because that way you're gonna find whichever flowers, whichever style you like the most for landscaping. I really like lots of landscaping, a lot of plants, but if you like more modern minimalistic landscaping, then it will definitely look a lot different than from what I am doing. Keep that in mind while watching today's episode because you might be able to take away some tips and tricks from this, but maybe you really don't like the style of my landscaping, and then I can just say go find your own. And please tell me in the comments if you have any specific tips for another style of landscaping that I'm not covering in the video today so that other people may take inspiration from it. So my first tip of today is that when you start landscaping and you've built a nice cozy house, start landscaping around the edges of your house. You see this in real life as well, that usually plants grow around the edges of houses, and when people do gardens and stuff, they usually have bushes or flowers or like overgrown areas just around the corner of their house. I already put some plants that I tend to use quite often on the side here. These are all base game plants, and these are my favorite to-go-tos because all of them are quite simple, quite basic. They have different height levels. That is something that I will touch upon later as well when we are landscaping. Basically what I do is this little thingy here, let me see what it's called. Low-lying pale yellow flowers. This thing is literally one of my favorite things to use in landscaping, and it works really well if you put it around the edges of a house. Just as with any other object in The Sims, you can rotate the items by using the comma and the period, or like the, pointy brackets, I don't know what they're called. If you use the square brackets, you can make them smaller or bigger, and if you use 9 and 0, you can lower and raise them. I have a separate episode covering stuff like this, like manipulating objects in The Sims, but that also works on plants, and this is something that I highly suggest using when you're landscaping in The Sims, because if you use the same plant over and over again, it kind of loses its dynamic, and this way you can bring that back by maybe making one bush a little bit bigger and making one a little bit smaller, and that way you can still use the same plant to make everything look cohesive. At the same time, you are keeping them separate, like one is big, one is small, so it adds a little dynamic to your build. What I usually like to do is like put these around the edges. If you select the Sims 3 camera and you hold Alt, you will be able to free rotate the items, which is also very, very nice to do in your landscaping, and just, put them around the edges. If you're placing an item and you hold Shift and you click, it automatically duplicates it. So that way you don't have to go around copy and pasting everything. But what I really like is like to do something like this. And here we kind of hop into tip number 2. And that is start with the lower layer of your landscaping, or at least make sure that it goes from like low to higher. So all the way in the back, you want to have your highest plants. And then in the front, you want to have some low growing bushes. What I tend to do is I usually grab either the shrubbery and I put them in the corner, simply because that is just a nice tall one that kind of hides the corner of the house. And then sometimes I grab some of these flowers. What I like to do is like stack landscaping. Usually when I'm landscaping in The Sims, I tend to just continue adding things, continue adding flowers, continue adding bushes until I feel like it looks good. Very often, if I just place one plant, it looks incredibly bare and I don't like the way it looks. Just continue adding, and at that point that I feel like, I'm not sure about this landscaping, what I often do is I continue. I don't delete it, I don't stop, I just add more. And then at some point, you either notice that you've gone too far and you do start over, or you notice hey, it's starting to make sense. I feel like everything's working. And that is usually because you're stacking plants on top of each other and it starts to look natural. Important to note is if you're stacking plants, I just realized that I just did this in the video. If you do not have bb.moveobjects enabled, the game will not allow you to stack plants. So if you want to do what I just did, please make sure to enable bb.moveobjects, because that way the game actually allows you to have objects intersect with each other, and then maybe you want to have some grass as a filler. And as you can see, that way it's quite natural that the bigger plants are in the back, smaller plants are in the front. We added some extra flowers to make it look a little bit more dynamic. We have some bigger plants in the back. Then we kind of go into tip number 3, and that is make sure that you keep your landscaping consistent throughout your build. Pick certain flowers, certain bushes, and keep using them over the entire build, because this way you actually make sure that the entire landscaping looks cohesive and it's not an area of like light green with white flowers and bushes on one side, and then on the other side there's like purple flowers everywhere. So select maybe 3 to 5 bushes or plants that you want to use throughout the entire build and make sure that you repeat them, because this way it looks very realistic, because that's kind of how it happens in real life as well. And try to think of plants that go together. Like if you use a cactus, maybe not use like tulips right next to it, because they usually don't go together in nature either. Try to pick plants that you can also see happening or growing next to each other in real life, because this way your brain will actually think that the landscaping looks better because they like you recognize the patterns from real life as well. The next tip that I want to give you guys is that you can definitely look around the world to get some inspiration for your landscaping, because obviously every world has a different vibe, has a different style. And usually the game developers already had an idea of what plants would grow naturally in that area that you're building in. So if I'm looking around here, I can see some palm trees. I see a lot of like pink, red, and blue flowers. I see some lavender. I note that here in the back, there's some sort of winery. So if I want to make sure that the landscaping sort of matches with wherever I'm building, just take a moment to look around. What kind of trees are they using? What kind of bushes or flowers are they using? And just use those, because that way when you're playing, your build will actually fit very well with the world that you're playing in, and it will just look a lot more natural. Also, leaving space on your lot will be more easy if you have landscaping that fits with the surroundings. If you have very distinctive landscaping on your lot and then your lot ends, it's very visible like where your lot starts and where it ends. If you want to do landscaping that is a little bit more spread out, so a little bush here and maybe a little tree over there, if you match it with the landscaping around your lot, that way you will actually be able to make the lot blend in with the world as if it's part of the world and not something that you build. The next tip that is kind of in line with using items and plants and flowers from the world around you is to use debug and live edit objects to up your, I would say, landscaping skill. Very important for this is you do need to enter cheats. I have a separate video on how to use and access the debug menu. I will link it in the cards up top, but it should also be in the playlist for the Builders Bootcamp. So that way you can just take a quick look on how to do that and I don't have to re-explain it over here. But as soon as you enable those cheats, you will actually gain access to all of the objects that are in the world around you. So this way you can literally use the same plants that you see that the developers used, because they are not always available in the regular build by menu. One of my absolute favorite landscaping items is the little stepping stones. I think they are actually from the base games. As you can see, for me, they're actually sorted into the rock category. This is because I'm using a mod from Twisted Maxi called Better Build By. If you install this, all of the debug and live edit objects will be sorted into the correct categories. If not, you will have to search for debug in the search bar to be able to find these, and you have to scroll until you find them. It's an option. I would highly recommend, if you're able to download mods, download the mod, because it's going to save you a lot of time. We have these little stepping stones that just look fabulous and amazing, and you know, just using them, rotating them a little bit, using Alt to free place them, it will give you like a ton of nice decoration build by items to pick from if you enable debug and live edit. And actually one of the best things if you're doing a rags to riches or a starter home or anything is that a lot of the debug landscaping is free. So as you can see, this is a very beautiful willow tree. It's 0 simoleons. If I grab it, it's just a tree. It literally looks as if it's a tree that you can get in the regular build by menu. It functions. Sometimes debug objects, your sim kind of walk through it, but usually with landscaping, that is kind of taken out because you also don't want your sims to walk through landscaping in the world. So it's usually tagged right and it's free. So it allows you to make your builds look super, super pretty without spending a lot of your budget. Then another tip, if you have placed a tree, to make it look a little bit more natural, make sure that you add some plants or rocks or anything like around the tree to, make it a little less naked, I would say. Let's just, grab a rock real quick. Let's just grab one from the base game. Let's grab another one. I added some flowers, and this way you can see that like around the tree, it's already starting to look a little bit more natural. You can also do this when you are making a pond or a pool or a fountain. Just adding landscaping that matches with your detailed landscaping around the build, around the trees or the ponds or the pools that you're placing. This way you're creating a cohesive style throughout the entire landscaping, and you don't have to place like bushes all around the pond or all around the tree. Just little bibs and bobs over there will totally make it look realistic and nice, and will just give a little bit more depth to your build, because even though the ground is grass technically over here, it's nicer to have actual 3D flowers or grass growing over there. And then I have one last tip for landscaping, and that is using the terrain paint to add even more depth and layers to your landscaping. I will do, like I said, a separate episode on the terrain tool that will also go into a lot more detail about the terrain paint and how to use it. So if you see me doing this and you're like, I have absolutely no idea how she's doing this, just wait until the next episode comes out, because that way you'll be able to actually get the information from that episode. But if you do know how to use the terrain paint already, then I would say go ahead and use this as well in your landscaping. What I often do is I either select like the dirt or the dirt that still has a little bit of grass in it, and I just go around the objects. I make sure that I have like a heavy blur on so it doesn't immediately put like an entire circle, and then I just add like little bits of shading almost. You can also do this like around your house, around your planters. Wait, that was behind my camera. Like around your planters, around your house. This just gives the illusion that your house is actually placed on ground that changed because you put rocks, plants, or a house on it, and it just gives it a little bit more depth. If you do it very subtle, it's not even that noticeable, but it makes your build look alive. And that is kind of what you want to achieve with landscaping eventually, is to make sure that your build looks like people are living there, things are growing there, and it's just not a box of walls placed on an empty lot. So that was the episode for today on landscaping. Please do feel free to comment down below whatever you do when you're landscaping. I know that there are a ton of debug items like planter boxes or more modern items that you can use to create your own steps or your own pathways. So please feel free to drop any of your suggestions in the comment down below, because I also love to get inspiration and learn from you guys. And if this video was in any way helpful to you, please give it a big thumbs up, because it really, really helps with the YouTube algorithm and helps this video get to more people. And if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!